Hello, and I'm going to talk about the problems with neoconservatism and neoconservatives in the modern era, in the Trump era. Now, to begin, neoconservative ostensibly means a person who might have been a Democrat 50 years ago, but is now supposedly a conservative. Neo, the prefix, I suppose, is to mean new, like the Neo-Roman and Neo-Ottoman Empire, etc. That is to say that people are trying to reform this conservative movement, and that was decades ago. But let's look into this. Who are neoconservatives? All neoconservatives are Zionists. Zionists are people that are pro-Israel and pro a Jewish state and the expansion of therein those borders to claim all of Palestine. Common, they mean well into invading the West Bank. They mean putting settlements in the West Bank that are illegal and claiming the Golan Heights, etc. So it means a greater emphasis on Israel. Now, a lot of this is because a lot of these neoconservatives, very disproportionately, exponentially so, are Jews themselves. A lot are Orthodox, a lot are secular, but a lot of these Jews are tied to their homeland. This is very important because it does not seem immediate at first, but when you look at the neoconservatives, they all end with names like Clausewitz or Stein or something like that. So that is to say that while not all of them are Jews, a lot of them are Ashkenazi Jews specifically, and because of this, they have a disproportionate amount of influence in the state of Israel and a tie to them. A big emphasis in this history and the contextualization of this video is to say that this is not to say that all Jews are like this. A matter of fact, Jews before this neoconservative era and the 1970s wave of nationalism after the Yom Kippur War of like 1968 or 7 was exactly that of Marxist socialism that was spread throughout Israel as well as Europe, and a lot of these people that were behind the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 were actually Jews. A part of the whole dynamic with Stalin was that he was always wary of these Jews that were the old guard of the revolution. And, a lot of these Jews, like Noam Chomsky, are popular communists that are in the academia system. And, that goes to with a lot of political science being dominated by Jews. But anyway, let's talk less about that, but let's go to this other thing. That is to say that a lot of ties with the neoconservatives that are today are with the industrial complex, the military one. That is to say that a lot of the American military complex is a system in which you have a private enterprise compete for contracts with the government, usually in the couple of billions or several $100 million range, on giving on the area dependent. Sorry. Okay, so they go to the Congress, and the Congress wants, let's say, a fighter jet with so-and-so specifications. So then, according to what the military wants, by the way, and since the military knows that they could get whatever they want within reason, these people are going to fight for the highest bid, and that is to say that they're going to try to make the best jet, but it's often more expensive because they have extra specifications on top of what the government wants so that they can get the money and the sponsorship ostensibly and get the revenue. Therefore, there's a vested interest in these military companies. Sorry, these Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman or Boeing or etc. Something like that that would invest in lobbying, in somewhat quid pro quo type deals with congressmen, etc., that would push for these contracts for them, which is more profitable anyway. So let's think about this. Who needs missiles and, bombs and etc., tanks? It would be people that are at war. Well, so war brings in demand for these products, meaning that in a time of war, things like Lockheed Martin or other companies would exponentially increase in terms of revenue and size and scope, throughout the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, etc. Okay, think War of Iraq. Who benefits? Halliburton, because they're getting government projects thrown at their way, okay? These types are surviving through mainly things like the Heritage Foundation or something like that, think tanks that are multi-million-dollar type institutes that hire all these aging people that are of the same mindset, which is that they need to defend Israel first, that they need to fight the Persians, that they need to keep on spreading democracy as a virtue by force, even if needed, and to intervene whenever possible. Okay? Now, a big list of neoconservatives would include. Look, if you were to look up a list of neoconservatives, you would pop up with all sorts of people, and these people very much prospered from the 80s to the 2000s, and is exactly a certain thing where you see that a lot of these are Jews, but there's also a lot of white Zionists. And this goes to the point that a lot of these Zionists are also evangelicals. This goes to a biblical root, not only in the Torah, but also in the New Testament, and an attachment to the chosen people. And this has to do with the $3.8 billion given every year for a 10-year contract with the Israelis, because that is exactly what they want. Now, a lot of people were in this movement, and that it would include George W. Bush. George W. Bush specifically gave billions of dollars to Egypt to not invade Israel. So over here, we're spending billions of dollars to avoid a war with Israel. Okay, his father, George H.W. Bush, of course, wanted to invade Iraq, and so they could also sow dissent between the Kurds and the Shiites within Iraq to dispose of Saddam Hussein, who was a step away from democracy, ostensibly stopping the eventual democratization of the country, which somewhat happened under the George W. Bush administration. But not only that, but we're also going to include that a lot of these people either lied using excuses like the weapons of mass destruction argument or of 9/11 to, and these things are, like, you could say, oh, well, they were well intentioned. Bush actually thought there was nukes in Iraq. Even then, he was wrong, or he was so evil that for his own interest in the neoconservative agenda, he did it anyway, costing thousands of lives, of course. And so the rationale is completely financial in a lot of cases. And a very prolific neocon, in fact, would be John McCain. John McCain, a war hero, of course. But how was he a war hero? Well, he was the grandson of an admiral and the son of another Navy man. So he was already a third-rate politician's son, kind of. He was already born into a dynastic family, ostensibly, so it would seem as if that he would follow that trajectory into being a war hero, and that's what happened. He went to Vietnam, he came back, he used the war record as a crutch, and then he wanted more wars, which is exactly what the neoconservative agenda is, and that is to say that, the war in Iraq isn't working, or Afghanistan isn't working. It is not, we pull out, cut our losses, and put America first. It is, we are going to double up, and we're going to put in more troops, and we're going to spend more money and kill more people over there so that, there can be a positive solution. Now, the neoconservatives are only a sect within the Republican Party and even part of the right-wing Democratic Party. That is to say that, well, if they had it their way, there'd be 300,000 troops in Iraq, right? And you know what? We could have succeeded that way, maybe. But because there was Democratic opposition and there was people on the fringes of either party that were the bulwarks against such a thing, we were able to be in this hosh-posh, cesspool of, one foot in, one foot out type of diplomacy in these wars where we didn't win. And another good bulwark against them were the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party movement, which the neocons did not really like, because neocons do not specify their objectives on the economy, is ostensibly the main motivation of the Tea Party, which is to usurp their power and fight for economic freedom for the American people, whereas the neocons were focusing still on the Middle East, of course. The neocons, such as John Bolton, present a problem to this day, or, in this current administration, insofar as Trump is pushed to go to war with Iran for the sake of Israel, or to go to war with Venezuela for the sake of just starting another war, really. And, this is all to go to show that these guys do not have Trump's good intentions, or they're not well-intentioned with the benefit of Trump or the American people, because Trump ran on an anti-war platform vaguely, and people that had supported him did not want another war. Yet these people within his administration, a lot of them being Jews, by the way, just or affiliated, Zionist had influenced the administration to try to get closer to war, bombing Syria in 2017 and 18, consecutively speaking. And they even were trying to depose of him before he were even the nominee. They were a part of that Stop Trump movement, and they were really trying to stop him from winning. They would even go for Hillary Clinton before. That is to say that they would go for a moderate Democrat over a populist Republican, because their real alignment is on foreign diplomacy first. Another key neoconservative would be Donald Rumsfeld. Donald Rumsfeld was a part of all the 9/11 things. He was a influential figure from Nixon onwards to George W. Bush. He was very, very into the whole NATO coalition type of things. And whilst these people were incurring record deficits through wars, they never stopped to think we need to raise taxes or we need to cut spending. George W. Bush let so many things fly by, and that is to say that he ostensibly didn't care about Austrian economics. He did not toe the Republican line when he went for Medicare Part D. He was focused on the wars. He was a wartime president. That's what he campaigned on in 2004. He didn't campaign on the economy. Why? Because the economy wasn't doing too great. It was mediocre. And that is to say also that this does not say that Democrats are not a part of this problem, but it is largely a Republican epidemic. Okay, now, who do we have in this list of neocons? And we have George W. Bush, Jeb Bush, Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, Chris Christie, Tom Cotton, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Mitch McConnell, Tim Palti, Tom Ridge, Marco Rubio, and Paul Ryan. A lot of these people ineffectual and ultimately are not known as firebrand conservatives or diehard conservatives, because they are very much in the centrist foreign diplomacy edged area of the party, with the exception of a couple, of course. We have a lot of people that, like I said, are Jews, and they disproportionately affect our government. You were looked at Elliot Cohen, for example. Bill Kristol is adjacent to that as well. Paul Wolfowitz, Donald Kagan, Ben Shapiro, people that don't even need to be in the government, but they are in AIPAC and they are lobbying people. And a big problem with the government is that many groups, super PACs are financing politicians, buying up politicians for their own interest. Now, while you don't hear about a Russian super PAC or a Mexican super PAC, donating for you to be a sucker for Mexico, you are seeing 80% of congressmen, or 60% of them, most of them, being bankrolled by Jews, by the state of Israel at least. And that is to say that this is all part of the neoconservative movement, where you have Hillary Clinton on one side and Donald Trump on one side, but both of them still vaguely support the state of Israel and the Middle East certain situation. Now, Trump, on the other hand, is not so much of a neocon, and he's actively gone against it. But yet again, he has a lot of people in the administration, and did before even more so, that are antagonistic to the America First doctrine. I make this video to point out that in this era of globalization and in an era where we're spending too much money on war, tens of billions of dollars in wars that we're not going to win ultimately, in Afghanistan, that are ending at least, but it is not a good thing that we're still in it, though. That is to say that also we are not in support of the neocons. They are our enemies. They are turncoat Republicans. They are rhinos. They are the Bill Kristols. They are the Never Trumpers. The Republican Party, I think, has fundamentally changed to the point where I don't think we need to be supporting these people anymore. Karl Rove is not our ally. Mitt Romney is not our ally. It is clear to see that the people like Rand Paul were correct. Henry Kissinger was wrong. We are not in a decline anymore. We are in an ascendant phase. We are to succeed and not bow down to any country, whether that be Saudi Arabia, Israel, or any other country that is trying to buy out our politicians. We got to solidify behind an America First strategy, and that is to say that no more wars that are fruitless. We don't need neoconservatives that are double aligned for another country just because of their ethnicity, for example. So I make this video as an educational purpose. It was pretty dry, but I did wing it. People need to know what is in this sort of paradigm that the Republicans are in now. Thank you. and like, comment, and subscribe for the video.